Hey everybody, it's Doug from 2 Plus Stuff, and I decided to just go ahead and start plucking some questions that I started to see in the comments, and I thought we could kind of turn them into sort of shorter little videos like this, just answering unique ideas and things to explore within Age of Sigmar. I thought for the first one we would do something that's pretty recent and a bit relevant to the Thondia release that came out, and that is a comment from user A Memphis, I believe is how you pronounce it. Says, so here's a question, Doug. Since these books would not necessarily need to follow the main storyline at all, what region or theme would you like to see them explore in the next or future expansions? So that is a very interesting question because it's something that's been on my mind tangentially. Like I was actually thinking several months ago, like those old Imperial Armor books that Forge World did for 40k back in the day, like where it's a self-contained story and campaign and all that kind of stuff. Exactly like what Thondia is. I was thinking about that. I was like, what if they did those for AOS? And this is essentially like a slimmer version of that because they are kind of building on some of the events that happened in Dominion. I felt like with the Thondia book, they kind of assumed a little bit of knowledge. But beyond that, I guess my real thought was, if you could do it in a self-contained manner, I think the best place to go would actually be Chamon, the Realm of Metal. So hear me out. The initial 3 realms that we explored when Age of Sigmar first began, I was there day number 1 with my buddy Raynor hanging out at Mox. When that dropped, there was this concept in there that permeated, like we were first introduced to the realms, and that they each had their own kind of vibe, right? The Realm of Fire, Realm of Life, and the other one that we went to was the Realm of Metal. In fact, the first campaign series, the Realmgate Wars, took place in all 3 of those things. But since then, it feels like there's been more attention paid to the Realm of Life, but that makes sense because Alariel's there, and there's always something happening with there between Nurgle releases and that kind of stuff. There's a lot of reasons to be in Ghyran. And then they did focus a ton on the Realm of Fire, which was like Vandus Hammerhand's campaign, that kind of thing. But going forward from that point, it seemed like they shifted focus a lot to the Realm of Fire, predominantly because Khorne was kind of the best at that point in terms of Chaos Gods. And then they did a flip to Shyish when 2nd edition dropped. But when they did that, they didn't pick up any of the story threads of what happened in the Realm of Metal. So Games Workshop, this is a freebie from me to you. I propose that we put a Seasons of War Thondia style book out there for the Realm of Metal Chamon, specifically within the Spiral Crux. Now, here's how I would format it, okay? The way that I would do it is you would tell 2 parallel stories. One is set in the Age of Myth. At this point, we're going to explain why that's important. And then the other one is going to be a more current story, and it could be a self-contained one. It could be a plot thread that you want to pull back to later on for a future publication. But there's a current time and an Age of Myth time. Both of them having kind of cross stories and maybe references to one another that interweaves a story where the events that bring Tzeentch into the Realm of Metal are happening story-wise for us, the reader, concurrently with something that Tzeentch is doing in the current time. It's a fantastic twist on Tzeentch being the one who's messing with the Realm of Metal, and his schemes of fate make this same story repeat itself, although we as players, of course, of this campaign have the chance to determine what that future is. But the fact that the current story is just one more iteration of the past is what makes it, in my mind, kind of Tzeentchy. It's just patterns and stuff like that. Now, for those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, I'm going to break down the history of this particular region. As I said, it's the Spiral Crux over in the Realm of Metal. Here's a picture of it, and as you'll see, it's got a really unique looking kind of landmass to it. It's like all these continents and islands are kind of sucked into a vortex into the center. Well, there's a story behind that. You see all of these islands and that kind of thing, all these, I mean, they're all continent sized, right? All these things used to be a series of very straight lines. I don't have an actual map of what it looked like before and after, but we get the sense that it's nice and orderly. And this was actually explained a little bit more inside the core rulebook, that it's just a place that Grugni himself crafted a series of like parallel islands that were meant to like work together and function. And yes, side note, this is Grugni's supposed realm. He's kind of stepped away from it. That's a whole different topic, but this is his place. Well, at one point, you'll notice in the dead center of this map, there's a location called the Griffin's Eyrie. What happened was there was a god beast that came and sat in the dead center of this chain of parallel islands. And it had such like alchemical weight and mass and energy and all these kinds of things that it began to literally warp the island all around it. So what we are looking at is almost like if you put a magnet inside a whole bunch of like when they put the black sand, I can't think of what the material is, over a magnet, and you can actually see like the magnetic field around it. It's exactly like that, where the islands almost like metal began to bow and twist as they're being pulled inward. And you don't need to know a whole lot about geology to understand that that's probably not good for a whole bunch of largely mountain-dwelling dwarves who are like scattered about, because this is Age of Myth kind of level dwarves. They still have their holds and stuff like that, and they would just get crunched like an accordion. You think about some of these continents bending. It's just a crazy idea. So a huge council got together of all the rulers of these islands who were alive still, got together, had a decision. Okay, we have the magical means to banish this thing, whatever it is, right? The Lode Griffin. We can get rid of him. Little did they know that a few people on that team of magicians to do this were actually already devout followers of Tzeentch. They had discovered him on their own and been corrupted. They corrupt the spell that's meant to kill the god beast and use essentially all the energy that was already present to tear open a hole into the realm of Tzeentch himself, and so like demons just like poured in to reality. This was the seminal moment for the realm of metal as far as we know right now, because it's the only thing they've really explored about it, that doomed it to the Age of Chaos. It's also where Tzeentch like stakes his initial claim for sure. And so what I am proposing is this idea of having a story that dives into that, a historical setting in the Age of Myth. Even though we know what the outcome is going to be, there can still be ramifications for things like that in the future, because Tzeentch makes the pattern repeat with you and I playing the campaign modern times with maybe, I don't know, whatever your next special anniversary model for Stormcast is, boom, that's the character, right? And perhaps a story in the modern times that overlaps the kind of plot points, but instead is them trying to shut down another massive ritual happening in the same area. And of course, the results of that one can be either left to us as players of the campaign, or you could circle back to it, kind of like, Marathi wanting to be a god, right? You seeded that early and you circled back to it for a campaign. You could leave it open, and then if you ever need a plot reason, Tzeentch, and you just link back to that. The reason the area appeals to me personally is because the events that are talked about, right? Continents bending and warping, the idea that your god, in this case Gorugni, personally carved these perfect land masses for you, and then even if you get rid of Tzeentch completely, it's not what he created. Like, there's a brokenness there that I think is very interesting to explore. But also, it's tied to Gorugni himself, a story that is also very sad, where he just gives up, like, for a lot of time, and then he has to, like, come back and figure out how to help. It's a story that includes the birth of the Karajan overlords, as their continents were being shredded and stuff and attacked by demons. They went upwards into the sky. I would wager that most of the dispossessed in, like, their lineage from cities of Sigmar, probably from here, because this would be where the highest concentration of dwarves would likely be. But also, I like it because it's by far, I would say, in my opinion, the most fantastical of the Games Workshop realm so far. By that I mean, that fantastical in like a literary sense. When they hit Akshi, Realm of Fire, it was a very, like, you kind of get the idea of like a volcanic kind of area, like maybe like an island type thing, but it's just stretched out for a continent. But we understand what that is like. And the same thing with Girian. It's like lush gardens and forests. Like, we have some concept of that. But then they land in Chamon, and like there's rivers of liquid metal that swallow them alive. There's a serpent that spins around and that acts as a local sun. There's all kinds of alchemical changes and morphing happening around them. And so it's like, it was the most, just like out there. And I understand why they kind of pulled back from that. I feel like Shyish was a very tame kind of fantasy, because I think they were trying to regain a lot of the old player base, which, I don't blame them for that. I mean, they might have gone too far with the crazy ideas and had to reel it in. That's totally cool. And now Gur, the only unique thing about it, from a storytelling perspective, like, is this that everything is a predator or prey, which is cool, but like the physics are the same that we would understand anywhere else. You know, it's just like a savanna, everything's trying to kill each other kind of world. We can, again, kind of conceptualize that, but there's just something about the world is so metallic that magnets bend it around, and they have all different kinds of changes. There's one fortress that sucks in the souls of Stormcast as they are killed to power a giant battery. He nukes an entire continent. Like, there's so many crazy things that happen in the intro to Age of Sigmar in the Realm of Metal. It's like, you already wrote all the stories. Just repackage them, fill in the gaps, tie it into a story, and you're done. Like, boom, making money on top of money. But also understand, my wife is a full-time writer, and I absolutely understand how easy it is to say something, then just like, go nerds, figure it out. And like, that's just not how the world works. Keep up the great work, guys. I loved Thondia. It was a really cool book. But yeah, on the note of like a self-contained thing, I think that there's enough information to tie a compelling story that has its notable event, meaning the Age of Myth, when the Griffin comes down, and then tie it to anything else you want to tell. It could be self-contained, and it gives you something to loop back to later on. There's enough interesting locations from the past and the present to put rules in, meaning you could have a city fight. Oh man, what's the name of it? In the first Realmgate War books, when the Celestial Vindicators land and they find like the remains of an ancient town, and there's actually like a banshee there who like just goes wild and tries to kill everybody. But like, you could have that same town being invaded by chaos and then also appearing again later in a story. Like, just kind of playing with mirroring and that kind of stuff, I think could be very compelling for a solo book like this. Again, doesn't have to be any tied to anything, but you could do that same thing for numerous places across the realms. Bonus points here, I'll even give you the name: Seasons of War Prosperous. Okay, I think that sounds super cool. Don't give it some large jargon name. There's tons of those here, and they're all really cool sounding, but they don't have that pop. Anyway, friends, this is all just for fun. Please keep leaving comments in the videos if you ever have questions. I'm going to start doing more of these because they're very simple, honestly, and I have a lot of medical stuff with my family. Everyone's doing well. I've just been traveling a lot to help out. So keep them coming, because these are the kind of content that I can crank out for you and just really engage when I'm having these kind of rough times. Thank you all so much for watching and listening, and I'll catch you next time. Happy wargaming.